Here's a fun themed fight. The Mechanical Menagerie. Each animal has an aura or a periodic aura, an area effect buff, and a signature ability. I'm going to start off with the auras. The sheep has Static Fleece. Every 2 seconds, it'll stun someone in melee range for 1 second. The dragon has Slag Ember. It'll put down a fire underneath itself every 5 seconds, unless it's casting something else. These are 3 yards in radius. The squirrel has a constant aura called Nutty Shield, reducing all damage done to it by 25%. And the chicken will spawn an egg roughly every 20 seconds. If the egg is left alive for 10 seconds, it'll become armed. Coming into 10 yards of it after it is armed will cause it to explode 10-yard radius fire damage. 2 of the area effect buffs are particularly scary, each lasting 15 seconds except for the squirrel's, which is 30. All are 10-yard AoEs. The sheep has a buff called Frayed Wiring, making it so him and his allies in range will reflect all damage done to them. The dragon's buff is Overheat. This makes each buffed ally deal 70 fire damage every second, and increase the damage they take by 25%, lasting for 15 seconds. The squirrel puts down a placed AoE that reduces damage taken by 50%. This does not benefit players. The chicken uses Cluck to buff his allies with 50% increased attack speed. Overheat and Widget Fortress are negligible. Frayed Wiring is wipe or don't damage for 15 seconds if it is applied to all of his allies. Shouldn't happen since you should keep them away from him. Cluck is 15 seconds of your tanks being in pain. Each of these has a 3-second cast. You can split tank the chicken away from the group as it's going to cast Cluck, and drag it back into the party after it is cast if you are worried about healing being difficult. And lastly are their signature abilities. The sheep does Binary Bleat. It is an 8-yard AoE silence. Very few know what this does because nobody really stays close to this thing. The dragon has Sprocket Fire Breath. This is a 60-yard bar in front of it that channels for 5 seconds, applying a stacking dot to those who stay within it. The squirrel's Widget Volley is a casted interrupt that can be interrupted, Interruptception. And the chicken has Peck. It's essentially a free melee to go with its auto attacks. This mob does the most damage to your tank. Traditionally, this fight will go keeping the sheep away from the 3-pack, one tank tanking the chicken, the other tank taking the squirrel and the dragon, shuffling out of the fire that's placed down, cleaving the egg down with the rest of them. If your healing can handle it, you can leave them in for Cluck. You can absolutely leave all of them in for Overheat. If you are struggling for mana during this fight, there are buttons around the room that you can click, essentially life-tapping your resources, trading 30% of your health for 20% mana. Don't stand in the place fire on the ground as it applies the same debuff that the breath does. You want to work these guys down together, as once any of them reach 1% health, they will begin a cast to repair themselves. You then have a 20-second window to kill the remaining bosses, and that's the entire fight. Almost immediately after you complete this encounter, Mechaneer Thermoplug will spawn. His aggro radius is about 10 yards. If anyone is unaware of this, or you attempt to loot the bosses near the center of the room, you may prematurely trigger his RP, which begins the boss fight. If parsing and world buffs matter to you, please pay heed to not trigger the boss early.